18 years ago, the world changed with a horrific attack on a civilian population in New York City, Washington, D.C., and in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And since that day, citizens of America and citizens around the world have gathered on this day to remember those whose lives were taken. Good morning. My name is Stephen Humaneski, a New York City firefighter with 26 years of service to the city before retiring in 2010. A long and rewarding career that is defined by just one day. The number one question I am always asked when people meet me is, were you there for 9/11? And I simply answer yes. Yes, I was. It's not because I have a difficult time talking about that day or all the days that followed, but unless you yourself were there, it is impossible to explain destruction both in its size and in the reality of the lives lost. We gather today to honor all that were killed that day, but especially the people that were made up of flight crews, law enforcement officers, and firefighters. These groups, tied together at this monument, are each represented with an individual memorial, but all had one common purpose. Each group served the public, and they worked each day to keep safe those in their charge. I stand here today to represent the 343 of my brother New York City firefighters whose names are etched on this tower. Each one of these names represent what a firefighter's definition of a hero is. The firefighters that responded to the World Trade Center knew this job would test their skills and their courage. Their work began even before they entered the building, evacuating those who worked in the towers, and they continued to do this as they made their way up the towers. Firefighters and police officers that day are credited with saving thousands of civilian lives simply by doing their job. To the many that were saved by firefighters and police officers, they became their heroes that day. The firefighters knew as they climbed the stairs that danger waited above. Many knew that they would never return, but they were also aware of the people trapped, and they needed their help, so they climbed. Sadly, as the towers fell, these firefighters became victims, and they became our heroes. It was and it remains a devastating shock to all of us, but in the grim days and the weeks and the months that followed, we were joined down at what became known as Ground Zero by firefighters from all over the country as we dug through the crumbled remains of what was once an iconic symbol of the boldness of America. There was no nationwide call for firefighters to come and assist. It just happened because that's what we do. We're a brotherhood, even if you are a sister, and we are a family that is spread out across the land, and yet we are as close as the nearest firehouse. They came to work, they came to support, and they came to mourn. Firefighters from across the country joined the bucket lines, removing debris from the pile and searching for victims. Some worked in our firehouses covering New York City, and they all attended funerals of our fallen members day after day. Each of us working at the site knew that the firefighter standing next to them, no matter where they were from, would have entered the towers that day to save a life. Because that's what this uniform means, and that's what this job requires. These acts prove that whether a firefighter works in Brownsville, Brooklyn, or in Brownsville, Texas, he or she is willing to do whatever the job entails. Sadly, the death toll from these attacks continue to today, taking those who worked in the rescue recovery. Today, our prayers are with them as well. It is an honor to stand here with these firefighters from Grapevine as we salute the brave work done that day and to remember our family. I will leave you with this thought. In 2003, I was asked to serve on a committee to dedicate a memorial for the police and firefighters that died on September 11th and decide what words would title that monument. I believe that these words would be perfect for all mentioned on this memorial. Never forget how they died, but always remember how they lived. I would like to thank Chief Brown, the Grapevine Fire Department, for the honor to speak here today, and I thank you all for attending this solemn service.